Let's learn a little more about select lists. I'm especially using what's called the selected index and options. So here, this is just like the pick select that we saw before, except that it's giving us some extra information here. You can see that I move this, I click this, nothing happens. And so again, identical to what we had, oops, gonna do that, identical to what we had before, except we're getting some extra information. And this is extra information about things that we want to show you how to use. So this information here is appearing in this div right here. So we've added a div. Yeah, I know this is the cheap way to do it, but I just put in a few breaks in order to give us a little bit of space here. And other than that, there's really nothing different here in the body. Where there is a difference is up here in our initialization function and in our event handler. First of all, this is something that's not necessary, but it's nice shorthand, especially if we're going to be using something a lot. And in here, we are going to be using utl.eid cell a lot. That is, we're going to be using this, if we come down here, we're going to be using this element a lot and referring to it a lot. So even though this reduces the amount of typing that we have to do, from when we had to use document.getElementById, we can reduce it even further. I just have a variable called LST and I assign this to it, and it just basically takes all of this, stuffs it in here so that I can just use LST. For instance, right here, I have lst.value. I could take all of that and paste it in right here for LST, but again, more typing, more work that way. So this gives us less work. So first thing is this. You can make life easy for yourself by, especially if you have elements that you're going to be using a lot, just assign them to a variable inside your function and then use the variable. So instead of having to type here, instead of having to type utl.eid open paren, cell in double quotes, and close paren, and then dot value, it's just lst.value. And this is the value of the whole thing. You can see that there. It's keep animals healthy, so that's the value that comes from here because currently it's the first item that's selected. Let's look at the other things. So value, we've already seen. This gives us the value of the selected option. Length tells us how many options there are. And so that's this part right here. We have 5 options, and you can see them when I drop here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the length of the select element tells us how many options are in the element. Next, we have this thing called a selected index, and you can see we're using the selected index there. And that's the index of the currently selected item. Now these indexes work the same way they do for collections and for arrays. They start at 0 and work their way up. So here with healthy animals, we have the index of this would be 0, and you can see that it is, right? Here's the keep animals healthy. There are 5 items in the list, and the index is 0. So the index for healthy animals is 0. Falling rock would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So just like arrays and collections, the last index here is 1 less than the number of options in the list, and that's because we start numbering the indexes with 0 and then go up from there. And finally, you see this healthy animals. Suppose that we want to access the text that actually appears in the list here. Well, that's what this is doing. So you'll notice this is healthy animals. And let's just work through and watch how these things change. So if I go to falling rock, now we have falling rock.jpg. Of course, we're always going to have 5 things in the list. We're not changing the size of the list. But you notice how the selected index changed to 1, which is appropriate because healthy animals would be 0, falling rock would be 1. So that makes sense. And you notice how the text here is falling rock, and that's the text that we get here, falling rock. I can go to one more. Let's go to open the door. You'll notice that the text here, open the door, is right here. The index, the selected index of that particular item is 3, as it ought to be, because we'd start here 0, 1, 2, 3. So that works. The list, of course, is always the same size. And this up here is just telling us where we're getting our information from. If we're getting a select pick, we're getting the information from here. If we're initializing it, then we get it from here. So we've talked about what these things are. You know what the list is, or what the value is. The values are given in the options, and we could see that. But what about this? And so to get the rest of this, to get the length, we've already looked at that. It's just going to be LST, because remember, right up here, I did that little thing. So I took what all of this was, took this element, put it in that variable. And so here I have lst.length, and that is the number of elements that there are in the list. Here we have LST selected index. That's how we get the index for the currently selected option. And then getting this text. How do we do that? Well, to get this text, we have to be a little more tricky. There's a little more we have to do. First of all, LST options. This gives me all of the option information. So options, you could look at options as a collection or an array of, actually I ought to say a collection, of these elements right here. So it gives me all of the option elements inside here. So in this case, options would be all of these options here. We have then LST, the selected index, so this helps us pick a particular option. Now for instance, let me just put 2 in there and save it, and we'll reload, and you notice that the text that came in was healthy animals, but and this is because of the init, but now look what happens. If I go open the door, it says air guitars. If I say notice is noticed, it says air guitars. If I say falling rock, it says air guitars. And why is that? Because if you look, this index is 2, so if we go 0, 1, 2, that's the air guitar area, and we're telling it to just give us the text for the option with index 2. Now of course, what we really want here is what we had before, so I'll come back and take that and put it back in there. We'll save it, we'll reload, and now it works the way it should. We get air guitars there, but we get open the door there, and so on. So in order to select the text for an option, we first have to go to the options, and then here, so that's the first part we do, and then here we have to go and give an index to the options, the index telling it which one we want, and then it's just .text at the end, and that gives us the text. So that's how we can, these are some extra things that we can use to do more sophisticated things with select lists, and in the next video we'll show you an example of how this could be helpful.